I just want to remind everybody, please, we've already hit our goal of $10,000, but let's not stop there. You can donate at pitcherlist.com/PitchCon. So encourage you to go help out a great cause here. But like Nick said, we are going to be discussing AL and NL only leagues for the next hour here, and I am joined by two great guests to help me do that. So first we have Nate Schwartz. Nate is currently a writer at Pitcher List. And well, actually, you know what? First, you should know who the heck I am because most people don't. I'm not that well known in the industry. That's why I was like, wow, I get to be a part of this. So my name is Chris Torres. You can find me on Twitter at Torres Takes. I am the co-host of the Fantasy Baseball Beat podcast, part of the Triple Play Fantasy Network. On our podcast, we bring on MLB beat writers to get you inside information to help you win your fantasy league. So usually the first part of our podcast, we talk to a beat writer, and then myself and my co-host Mike Carter of Fantrax and Rotoballer, we discuss that information from a fantasy perspective. So again, go check us out on Triple Play Fantasy Podcast Network, and you could find us there. So that is me, but let me bring on Nate Schwartz. Nate, thank you so much, man. How are you doing?
Thank you. Thank you for having me, introducing me. I feel like, same way, not as many people know about me in the industry, so happy to be here. I've been writing at Pitcher List for around 2 years now, doing everything from daily content to the newsletter to some of the more kind of analytical pieces, which I've been writing a bunch of this off season. And from a fantasy perspective, been playing since around 2015. Played in a few mono leagues, so definitely kind of a change of pace. So definitely excited to get into this set of analysis for the next hour or so.
Awesome, man. Well, looking forward to it. We also have with us Sam Lutz. Sam, good to see you. How are you doing?
It's good to be here, Chris. Thanks for having me. I'm doing pretty well. I've also been at Pitcher List for 2 years. I wrote Going Deep 2 years ago, and then last year I started the Deep League Risers and Fallers article, which I plan to continue weekly this year. So hopefully that's helpful for some AL and NL only stuff because you're going a little bit deeper or a bit deeper there with only half the players. But I'm excited to get started today. I'm happy that we've already hit our goal for raising $10,000. It feels like less pressure on us, even if nobody's watching, because we're a couple of lesser known people here. I don't even have a Twitter presence myself. I stay off the social media. It's pretty much just me writing my articles and answering questions on Reddit afterwards.
I was looking for you on social media. I'm like, wait a second, this guy's not on here? Like, he's not on Twitter?
What the heck? Twitter, no Instagram, not even a Facebook.
I basically now tell me about
that. That's impressive.
That is very impressive. Is that just like you feel like it makes you less productive? You just don't want that in your life? Tell me the decision there to have no social media.
I just never got into Facebook, and when Twitter first started, however long ago, it seemed worse. It seemed like it was the lowest form of communication at 140 characters, and it was mostly made for hot takes and complaints. So I just never got into it, and the longer it's gone on, I feel like that might have been the right decision.
You're probably better off. I think you did make the right decision, Sam. There's benefits to it. I think there's, especially with the fantasy baseball community, I think you get a lot of good information there, but there's also a lot of drawbacks.
It is good. It's great to see call-ups and whatnot. It's definitely worthwhile, especially following probably beat writers and stuff like that. You probably get information before other people, but there's enough stress in just regular life that I don't need virtual life to add on to it.
You're a smart man. All right. Well, let's get into it. And listen, I know not everybody, like AL and NL only leagues are obviously not as popular as mixed leagues, but I think this can be, whether you play in these formats or not, I think it could still be a really helpful and informative panel that we have here. Because, for those of you who play in deep leagues, like the players that we'll be discussing today, or some of them at least, I think are going to be some of your deep league targets. So whether you play in this format or not, I think we're going to be giving out some good information here. So I'm going to ask a few more general questions, and then we're going to get into specific players. So first question to you guys is, how does your approach differ in an only league as opposed to a mixed league? And Nate, I'm going to throw this to you first.
Yeah, so there's a few things, but I think the biggest one is being more aggressive on lighter positions. I think you really have to know kind of where tiers fall off. In mixed leagues, you can usually tell when, I missed a guy, but there's a prospect or kind of an older player, 5-10 rounds later that I can nab and, wait for that. But it's such a smaller player pool. So knowing when you're reaching that point of no return to make sure you get a guy, even if it's a round or two early. And then kind of on the flip side, you need to be more aggressive if you want to get into a catcher early or get some saves early and just kind of know where all of those positional tiers are.
Yeah, that's exactly it. It's just the positional scarcity comes up a lot faster. It starts getting late much earlier in the only leagues. So especially we'll see it in some of the positions. I lean more towards the AL in this, where things drop off real fast at some positions. And there becomes a danger of not only not getting a guy that you're happy with, but really running into people that you're worried about playing time fast.
Right. Well, that was going to be my next question, is to identify what might be some differences in the player pool this season, specifically in the AL as opposed to the NL. So could you give us maybe an example, Sam, of a position that may be a little bit more scarce in either league?
The first one that jumps out is first base in the American League is really shallow. There's only, I think, one player going in probably the first 3-4 rounds usually, and that's Vlad Guerrero. And that's somebody who's not coming off a particularly inspiring season that I would like to invest, a top 12, 13 first-round pick in right now. And it goes on in that, too. I think third base might be the one where I think the AL leads a little bit. And pitching seems pretty even. But for the most part, the NL overall seems like it has better deep options than the American League.
Okay. What about you, Nate?
When I was prepping for this, I ran a auction calculator with ATC for a 12-teamer, and the top 100 hitters in the National League are almost $2 more expensive on average than AL, which is kind of crazy. Obviously, you have Ronald Acuna, and I think some of the top-level hitters in the National League outweigh that of the American League, but it is kind of crazy that you have to be a lot more aggressive, at least in the American League side, if you want to get a top guy. I think having a top pick is going to be crucial, unless you're going to have to make some, very smart dart throws later. With Sam said, I think first base is kind of the biggest, most eye-opening position in the American League that I noticed.
Yeah, I'm just pulling up here. I use a software called RotoChamp, which is kind of like an auction calculator, an SGP, and running it for an AL only. You've got Vlad Guerrero, who's a clear top option at first base, then followed by Yandy Diaz, Josh Naylor, Vinny Pasquantino, and Tristan Casas. So that's your top five. But yeah, I mean, it thins out pretty quick. I mean, you're looking at someone's going to be starting, you've got Rizzo, Turner are kind of in that 10 through 12 range. And then it gets pretty murky pretty quick here. So,
yeah, I mean, you've got a top 5 guy in Vinny Pasquantino there who's got less than a full year of major league experience and is coming off major shoulder surgery. Right. And that's tough for a premium power position.
Yep, absolutely. So, okay, so we'll talk a little bit more. I'm sure through our discussion, we'll kind of highlight some of these positional needs, in these respective formats. But how we're gonna format this next segment is we're gonna use Fantasy Pros consensus rankings, and they have them up there for both AL and NL only, and we're gonna go through groups of 25. So, for example, I'm gonna ask Nate to identify one player in the 1 through 25 ranking that he is targeting from that group. And then I'll give it to Sam to handle the National League. And then I'll go back to Nate for the grouping of 25 through 50 and so on and so on. So we'll get through as many players as we can here. So starting with you, Nate, for the American League, looking at the top 25 ranked players according to Fantasy Pros, who is one player that you were targeting from that group?
Yeah, so the first guy here, I had a tough time kind of looking at the first round level of guys because I was you can't go wrong with most of them. They're all awesome. But one guy who I've seen a bunch of kind of more polarizing discourse this year is Pablo Lopez. and I'm all in on him this year. I know a lot of people are kind of worried about volume as he's gone, I think, over 180 innings back-to-back years, and he's had a past of injury history. But, every pitcher is risky when it comes to innings. And I think seeing that he can do it back-to-back years, especially as he gets later into his career, is only a vote of confidence for me. And then, when it comes to his arsenal, his fastball ticked up about a mile or so an hour more, and he started getting, I think, 17% whiff rate on it, which is absolutely absurd. He's also got the changeup, which has always been, his bread and butter, and also added a sweeper from driveline last year, which I think for many people is just kind of the pitcher's version of he's in his best shape of his life. But it did actually kind of work. It had a 30% CSW and just added to the wide range of arsenal that he's been able to command so well over the last year or so that I think is just going to only elevate him this year.
Mm-hmm. Totally with you on Pablo Lopez this season. I mean, like you said, every pitcher carries risk. It's funny. Yesterday, I posted a draft board of a recent draft I did to Twitter, and someone commented, well, it looks like you have a lot of injury risk there. And I mean, and just to give you an idea, I had guys like Freddie Peralta, Joe Ryan, Bailey Ober, Savali, and Maeda were my first 5 pitchers. And I get it. There is some risk there, but I mean, can you really turn anywhere within the starting pitcher pool and not be taking on risk? Right. So that's just inherent with the position. But Pablo Lopez, I mean, if you look at the skills growth last year after he came to the Twins, who it looks like the Twins really know what they're doing in terms of developing pitchers. Let's hope that them losing their pitching coordinator to the Red Sox doesn't impact that. But I mean, they're doing something right there, and they really helped Pablo take a step forward. And let's also point out Pablo Lopez is a friend of the industry. I know he did the podcast with Nick, which is still in my queue, and I have to listen to that. But
it's worth every second. It definitely, you look at enough stats and video, and a lot of it blends together, but kind of seeing the personal side and seeing his kind of process for how he goes about in between starts on the mound is honestly unbelievable. And it's I absolutely trust him. And from an injury perspective, especially for AL only, if you go DeGrom, Stanton, and Rizzo, that's an insane amount of injury risk. Mm-hmm. But kind of the lower tier guys who, might have been sidelined with one big injury, or they had a smaller, non-essential, maybe leg injury or something like that. You can trust those guys more because it's not necessarily something that is plagued, and also from a draft position, he's not your first round pick. And I think you're able to recover if for some reason he doesn't pan out, as it's not completely crushing.
Right. I think so much of it, you hit on a good point. It's about roster construction, right? You don't want a team full of really high risk guys, or if we're talking pitchers specifically, a group of guys who haven't really given you a strong innings workload in previous seasons. But if you're going to, you can take shots as long as again, there's always risk with pitchers, but as long as you have more of a stable foundation. If you're starting out with a guy like Garrett Cole, for example, in the first round, yeah, I'm okay taking, on a little bit more risk with my SP2 or 3, because I feel confident that I at least have a foundation there with Cole up top. So, loving Pablo Lopez this season. Let me kick it to you, Sam. Who do you like in the National League out of these first 25 players here? Who are you targeting?
I mean, if there's anyone I can get out of the first 25, I'm going to walk away with Ronald Acuna every single time, because he is so much better than everybody else in baseball. I mean, you'll be set. You've got somebody who's giving you elite production in every category that you could score. I don't think anybody else went 40-70 last year, and I don't think anybody else is going to go 40-70 this year. But if you don't pick first overall, you're not going to get Ronald Acuna. So beyond that, I'd be very happy walking away with either Spencer Strider or Freddie Freeman in the first couple of rounds, because I want somebody who I feel pretty happy about Strider health-wise, which is always a concern for pitchers. The ERA rose up a little at the end of last year, but I'm not super concerned with that because the strikeout numbers are so high. He's such a dominant pitcher. And Freddie gives you a lot of the same things Ronald Acuna does to a lesser degree, but he also plays an infield position. And generally speaking, it's going to be harder to find infielders than outfielders as you get later in the draft. But you still have somebody who's not going to hurt your average, and he's even going to probably chip in 15 to 20 stolen bases as a 30-year-old less than fast first baseman. So I just, it's such a nice base to start off with right there. If you can get a 5-category producer, I would take it.
Yeah, Freddie, I mean, I think he's getting a little bit more love this year after the year he had last year, but I feel like he's been perennially kind of underrated by the fantasy community, but he does give you such a strong foundation across the board that you can't go wrong with him. And man, let me tell you, if you're getting Acuna, like if you have the 101 in an NL only league and you get, obviously you're taking Acuna, it's almost like that's almost unfair. Like I feel like you need to be like penalized somewhere for that. Like you lose a pick or something. Like it's just such a huge. I mean, I think even in a mixed league, getting the 101 and having Acuna is like you're so far ahead of the field. I feel like, but especially in an
it's such a huge advantage. The 70 steals by itself is nonsense. If he was a 15 to 20 home run player, he'd still be the top pick in the draft. He could have hit 280. He'd still be the top pick in the draft.
Right.
And you're getting what is basically bonus 50 points of average and 30 home runs on a guy who is already the best player in baseball.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, he's projected for like a 320 average with like 40 home. It's absurd what he did last year. Can I tell you a quick story that I still lose sleep over? Last year in a main event, which is a lot of money to enter, I had the 101. I was blessed with the 101 pick. And I don't know what came over me, but I took Trey Turner over Ronald Acuna, and I still finished third, which I'm proud of. But every day for the whole season, it was just like because I kept looking at the box scores, and I'm like, all right, eventually this guy's got to hit like a cold streak, right? He can't keep this pace up for the whole season. You
would think, yeah, it's a hard pace to keep up, and it's hard to steal that many bases when you're hitting so many home runs and doubles.
Yeah, I mean, it was literally video game numbers, and it was just the most frustrating thing every day. 2 more steals, another home run, another 4 hits. I'm like, this feels personal at this point.
Yeah, it's like he's playing MLB The Show, and everybody else is playing in the show.
Exactly, yeah. So, but yeah, just wanted to quickly highlight your Strider pick. I mean, yeah, Strider he sets you so far apart in strikeouts that, maybe not the same level of Acuna advantage, but like getting him at the top of your draft in an NL only gives you such a huge advantage over the field in pitching specifically. And I think the ERA, I know he gets kind of, his detractors that think, well, he only has 2 pitches and, maybe the ERA is going to stay high. I think by looking at all the underlying metrics, at least the research that I've done, he got a little unlucky last year. So I feel like there's a good chance we're going to get the same strikeout numbers, but even better ratios. And if that happens, then he's going to be a monster. He'll probably be the 2nd overall pick next year because of that advantage that he gives you. So
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me. And it's a good team situation, both for wins and quality starts. So it doesn't really matter which type of league that you play in. He seems like a very safe bet for pitchers, which is a hard thing to say.
Yep. Absolutely.
I think it'd be a lot better for NL only leagues if you just maybe excluded the Braves as a whole.
Yeah,
and just went from there. Maybe it'd be a little bit easier, but
I'm going to start my own NL only. And again, there's some kind of Acuna again. There has to be some kind of penalty almost. But I don't know if anybody will play that with me. Anyway, moving back to American League. Nate, can you give us a player going in that 25 to 50 grouping that you are targeting?
Yeah, so generally in mono leagues, I try to stay away from prospects. They're always super shiny, and often their production is not what you want, but I'm going to completely subvert that and go with Evan Carter. I think what we saw with the Rangers at the end of the year and then in the playoffs is all you need to know about him. He's got, elite plate skills that have already translated to the big league level. And he's already, I think, slotted to get in a bunch of everyday playing time. I think on roster resource, they have him currently as their cleanup hitter. And that includes Wyatt Langford as the DH. So I don't think, I mean, with the prospect pedigree Carter has, I don't think he'll ever lose out playing time to Langford. But I think he's super safe, will get you a bunch of counting stats because he's got awesome on-base ability, as well as a little bit of power and average to go with it. So you can get maybe 25-15, I think, which would be phenomenal from this late in the draft, or middle rounds of the draft. Obviously, the BABIP will come down from last year. He's not going to continue an absurd 400 plus clip, but I think he's a pretty safe young guy to jump on that could definitely be a top 15 contributor by dollars earned by the end of the year.
For sure. Yeah. I mean, the Rangers they showed a lot of confidence in him as a 21-year-old to thrust him right into the cleanup spot for their World Series run. I mean, at first when I was looking at him, I started to have a little concern that there's just so many pieces there that he could lose some playing time. But even if he does, I think the skills, the fact that he gives you that power speed combo, just looking at his projection, and the one that I'm looking at here is a combination of ATC and Steamer. That would put Evan Carter, they have him for 510 plate appearances, 74 runs, 17 home runs, 72 RBIs, 17 stolen bases, and a 253 batting average. So, I mean, that's pretty solid. I would even take the over on the stolen bases. So I feel that where you're getting him in drafts, I've done, I was in the middle of a mixed league draft the other day, and he was going around 140, 150. I think that's and in the middle of a really good lineup too. I think that's some may see risk because of the age and lack of time in the major leagues, but I think that's a really good foundation there, and he has a pretty good floor in my opinion. So.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things with kind of the age is, you see a lot of guys who don't have the discipline to keep up, or they have the discipline, but they can't get enough power on the ball. And Carter's already displayed, both in kind of the end of the regular season, but then obviously in the playoffs where, it matters that much more. You're pressing, it's a stressful environment, and it's he can do all of it. So I think he's pretty safe. And I know there's definitely a playoff tax at that 40-ish ADP in an AL only league, but I think it's definitely worth it. He's definitely proven, that he has what it takes to make that jump.
Yep.
Yeah, it kind of reminds you of Randy Arozarena coming up and lighting the league on fire at the end of the season and then into the playoffs a few years ago. And again, it's another offense that you want pieces of. Mm-hmm. So, I like the harder pick right there.
Yeah, it's definitely, especially in mono leagues, I'm a big fan of, finding guys in the lineup where it doesn't really matter where they are in the lineup. If they're on base, there's a chance they're getting an extra run, maybe are able to steal to get into scoring position. So I think, any of the kind of even depth pieces on that Ranger lineup will be really interesting even later.
Yeah, I feel like we underrate that, or traditionally have underrated that in fantasy. What is the player's context? If you have somebody on the Braves or the Rangers or some of these the Dodgers, I mean, the counting stats, like you said, it doesn't matter where you bat. The counting stats are going to be safe because you have so much opportunity. So definitely agree there. All right, going back to Sam, who do you have 25 through 50 in the National League?
I picked the top three again. There's a lot of exciting players, actually. This is a fun place to draft pitchers in the National League. But if you missed out on Freddie Freeman early on, I like Chris Walker as a first baseman in this one. He's probably not going to be plus on average, but you're not going to get hurt. You're going to be around 250, 260. I think you can expect 30 home runs and a lot of counting stats, and he could probably even pitch in double-digit stolen bases like he did last year as a solid player. But sitting right there in the early 20s, you have Yamamoto, and he's just so exciting and fun this year that if you get a chance to draft Yamamoto in the third round, fourth round, I don't see how you're going to pass it up. Because the upside, if he produces like he did in Japan, it's going to be so fun. He's going to have great winning opportunities with the Dodgers. But coming over, just listening to the fireside chat with Nick before this, you do have to worry if the Dodgers are going to a six-man rotation. If they're going to baby him a little bit because it's a long contract, then they might treat him a little bit more like a prospect than a major league veteran, since he's been pitching professional leagues, but not American professional leagues for a few years. He's just such a fun, exciting target. I don't think I could pass him up if he's sitting there around pick 30.
Mm-hmm. So what would you say to the fantasy player? Because I've heard this quite a bit. Well, we've never seen him do it before, so I can't invest an early round pick in somebody like that.
I would say Kodai Senga was fantastic last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that Yamamoto is going to fare worse. Senga had some growing pains. I think there could be a difference. The ball is different, slightly larger. It's not as tacky as they use over there, so it could take a second to adjust to it. But I think someone who has excelled as much as he has, I'm not really worried about the talent translating. And he's in an excellent team situation where I think they're going to do whatever they can to support him. He's got Shohei helping him out, who's already gone through this. He's transitioned over here. He's not pitching this year, so he might be acting, somewhat as a mentor, hanging out with the other starting pitchers, just having fun. And I feel like that's great for morale. I would have a smile from here to here if I was around Shohei Ohtani all day.
Yeah, I also think he had the benefit of getting to pitch in front of StatCast cameras during the World Baseball Classic. So I think there's a lot of people who, have said, oh, he hasn't done it here before, but we've already kind of gotten the numbers that you want to see, and all of the pitches look absolutely unbelievable.
And the stadium's not going to be too bright for him. It's the stage is not going to be too big. Rather, he's done this before. I have a lot of confidence in Yamamoto.
Yeah, I don't think there will be that big of an adjustment period. He's absolutely awesome, and I think we'll see that pretty quickly.
Yeah, no, I happen to agree with you. Definitely targeting him. I was a little bit on the fence just because I feel like I didn't know enough about him, but I read an article by Eno Saris in The Athletic, which really broke down his arsenal and his pitch mix. And I mean, it's just looking at what he has to work with. And then you put him on the Dodgers. It's just hard to pass that up. I mean, I think the upside is just huge with him. I know you're investing in an early round pick, but I think there is an upside case for him being a strong SP1 this season. And I also do think that first year coming over from Japan, I think the pitchers have a little bit more advantage as opposed to a hitter coming over, because they pitch with such deception. They have more of this deception that I think it takes a while for the league to adjust to. So I could really see, just looking at even what Tanaka did in his first year. And people have compared the two in terms of their pedigree, Tanaka and Yamamoto, and he had an excellent first year and a good career overall over here. But I could definitely see him just hit the ground running. And another overlooked thing too that you mentioned, we don't often think about as fantasy players, just the comfortability, right, of having Shohei Ohtani there and kind of helping him make that transition. I don't think we can really overlook that, right?
No, I think so. So yes, somebody having done that before and being a role model, a mentor for him, I think is it's almost unquantifiable how much helpful that can be.
Exactly. Real quick on Christian Walker. I like Christian Walker this year. I've liked him for a few years now, just because I felt like he was undervalued relative to the skills that he had showed. I put this out on Twitter the other day and nobody liked it, but I just want to bring it up here. I compared and did a quick skills check between Christian Walker and someone who I absolutely love this season, given the price. And that's Heimer Candelario. Now, you may hear Heimer Candelario and be like, well, boring player, right? But if you look under the hood, let me just give you some numbers to compare Candelario versus Walker. Their contact rate, overall contact, Candelario beats Walker 78% to 75%. Let's see here. Hard hit rate, Candelario 31%, Christian Walker 33%. Barrel percentage was a little bit lower, 8% for Candelario, 11% for Walker. Similar fly ball rate, similar K percentage. Both chipped in some steals. Candelario had 8 last year. Walker had 11. Heimer Candelario is going 100, at least in mixed league drafts. He's going 125 picks later. He also is going now to a hitting environment, which is arguably the best in baseball. Maybe it's behind Coors Field, but not that far behind. Has multi-position eligibility. Let me just get some quick love for Heimer Candelario. Back me up here.
Yeah, I'm absolutely for it. I did actually, I think I read an article the other day about the Reds infield situation because they have so many exciting guys. And I didn't really understand the Candelario signing at first, but, they paid him the money and they've come out and said that everyone else may rotate, but he's going to be playing every day. And, those skills I think are definitely going to translate in the park. He's going to have a great opportunity to hit, definitely run up some counting stats. And I don't think he's going to be, at least this year, in fear of losing the spot at either third base or DH throughout the season.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think the team environment, that's a good lineup. Great park. He's going to be hitting. They said he's going to be playing every day. Going to hit probably third or fourth. I really I'm saying it now. Bold prediction. 30-100 for Heimer Candelario this year with a good bat with a 270-ish batting average.
I could definitely see it. I feel like that Reds lineup could really boom or bust. As a Cardinal fan, I'm more biased to the bust side of it, but as a baseball fan, they have so many fun players, and I think that in Great American Ballpark, you can see some absolute damage done to opposing pitchers' ERAs all season long.
I also support a rival NL Central team, so I also hope that they bust a little bit more than that. And I do know that they are saying he's going to play every day, but there's so much talent there, and there's so many young guys who could come up and play that unless a John India trade or Spencer Steer trade or something happens, it's still going to be in the back of my mind that a bad slump could cost him playing time.
Mm-hmm.
If Ellie hits, if Strand hits, if everybody hits. There's just too many guys to give every day at bats to still.
Agreed. Yeah, I think it's a fair point. I think it's definitely in the range of outcomes. I think at the price, I'm willing to take the gamble that they do give him the everyday run there. So
I do still think that they're going to trade for a starting pitcher too. I think
it just doesn't make sense not to.
For them, yeah.
Yeah. They've just got a glut there. Like even Jake Fraley in India, like these guys, they have pieces that I think teams would be interested in. So if you need pitching, use that surplus to get some pitchers.
Yeah, I think Cease would be a great fit there. I know the White Sox are doing everything they're trying to do to make sure he doesn't move for some reason. But they've got a bunch of interesting prospects that aren't going to see the light of day with the current roster.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yep. Okay, so let's get back to the American League here. Nate, give me a player 50 in that group of 50 to 75 who you are targeting.
So for this one, I'm going to go with Chas McCormick. I think now that Dusty Baker and his hatred for Chas is gone, he's going to get a full run of playing time in either left or center throughout the year. He's now on 3 straight years of a 10+% barrel rate and nearly went 20-20 last year in just 450 plate appearances. He's really showed that he can start making more contact and more powerful contact. And last year, I think the big revelation was he started hitting more pulled fly balls than previous seasons, which in Minute Maid is perfect. They've got a short left field. Alex Bregman's made a career out of doing that. And now McCormick with a full run and kind of enhanced approach, I think is just going to feast in a full season with the Astros.
I love that pick. I love Chas.
Yeah, I think he's really toolsy. He's 29, so I think we're getting the best that we're going to get of him. And I don't think the Astros have any reason to hold him back. He doesn't need to be babied at any point, and I think we're just going to get a full run and full kind of understanding of what he's going to do. And this late, I think getting a guy who can maybe contribute in 4 or 5 categories is going to be absolutely crucial.
People sleep on those late career breakout guys too. The Max Muncies of the world just don't get the respect that they deserve a lot of the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, when you don't have the prospect pedigree, I think it's very difficult to sway people's minds that a player's changed or gotten better or, has improved in any way. And I think McCormick, or like Muncie, is a great example of that.
Yeah, I definitely have that bias. I mean, I'll be honest, I haven't really been too enthusiastic about drafting Chas McCormick, but I probably should rethink that because I'm looking now. I mean, the underlying skills, if I took away the name Chas McCormick and substituted it with somebody that maybe had more pedigree or that I just had more of a bias for, I'd be like, oh, I got to get this guy given where he's going. I mean, he gave you an above average barrel rate, didn't strikeout rate was a little bit elevated, but certainly palatable. Like you said, he really made an adjustment with his approach. I think Saris had even mentioned, hope I'm not misspeaking here, but I think he had mentioned him that he spoke with who had said that he was making a conscious effort to pull the ball more. So everything under the hood looks solid. And yeah, that power speed combo, that's the name of the game. When you get guys like that, it just puts you so far ahead. So good call out there.
And he's hitting in the same lineup as a lot of great players too. I mean,
right.
you're hoping to drive in Jordan Alvarez, Jose Altuve. I mean, really high on base guys. They'll give him a lot of RBI opportunities.
Yeah, I mean, Kyle Tucker became a top 15 pick, hitting in the bottom third of the Astros lineup. And I mean, I don't think McCormick will do the same, but I think he'll be a very productive guy, even though he's hitting, I think, 6 or 7 in that lineup right now.
Yeah, I would expect around 6. Yeah.
Let's just be happy we are free of Dusty Baker and we have these players that we like, that we know deserve more opportunity, whether it's Tucker hitting higher in the lineup or McCormick playing every day. What will really crush us though is if Joe Espada comes in there and he's just like he was a Dusty Baker disciple and he just does the same thing. I mean, that would just be absolutely devastating.
Between Tucker, Yainer Diaz, and McCormick, that would be an absolute gut punch to a lot of these early drafts, I think.
I think we as fantasy players have almost just like assumed that's the case, right? That they're going to be smart. But I think sometimes we may jump the gun and assume rational coaching or managing when it's not always the case. So
to be fair, Mauricio Dubon was very helpful for me early last year, getting through a lot of injuries.
Yeah, and I think he'll be great. It's actually interesting. I was looking at roster resource, and they have McCormick in left and Jake Myers in center with Dubon on the bench, which I just can't see happening because McCormick and Dubon both provide much better offense while playing strong center field defense. So, I mean, maybe I'm worried that they will rotate some guys, but I think there's more depth there than I originally, anticipated.
I don't want to see Mauricio Dubon playing more than once a week. That will just kill me. But all right, Sam, take us to the NL. Player you're targeting from pick 50 to 75.
So I was torn between a couple of Marlins right here, between Luis Arraez and Tanner Scott, who came on real strong closing at the end of the year. Tanner Scott's underlying stats are absolutely gorgeous. I look towards the end of the season. He does everything well. He doesn't walk guys. He strikes guys out. He gets excellent chase rates. He's a surprisingly incredible relief pitcher. It's probably a little early to draft relievers, but if you're in a saves league and it's NL only or AL only, it's just there's very few real closers to go for. And if you have 2 of them, that's going to be a lot more than other people in the league have. So if you can get one big name like Tanner Scott, I don't hate it here. That being said, I would probably still pick Arraez earlier because I want that kind of he's the absolute best in the league at one thing. And this late in the draft, it's hard to get somebody who's the best in the league at anything, but you've got somebody who could very well should lead the National League in batting average next year. So that's probably where I would go in this range.
Yeah, I think banking average this late allows you to do so much more early in the draft because it just becomes an absolute pit of all sorts of guys who are kind of one-tool guys later, but finding Arraez can create a fantastic floor in an NL-only league.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
just to get back on Tanner Scott again. Tanner Scott is in the top % of major league pitchers in everything except walk rate. Everything, just every underlying set. It's just I don't even want to list them all, but it's just everything is right up here. All the sliders are as high as they go.
Yep, I think he's probably being a little bit undervalued because people still are still like a little bit hesitant. Like, is he really the closer? Is going to keep that job? Will the walks creep back up? So I get that, but as I'm talking mixed leagues, as like your RP two, like your closer 2, I think is a good target. I don't know about as your first closer, maybe a little bit of risk there, but in an NL only league, you're probably looking at that. Like,
Yeah.
not
If
obviously.
he's your only closer in an NL only league, I think you're okay.
Okay. Yep. Quick on, well, maybe not so quick, but I just wanted to talk about Luis Arias for a minute here. I love Luis Arias this year. And listen, like you said, it's hard to find somebody who is the best in the league at anything at the point in the draft where he's going. But I think that we may be underrating the potential that maybe there's a little bit more power than people perceive for him. And I get it. It's a small sample, but I'm going to give you his last month. He had 5 home runs in September. Now, I will sit here and acknowledge sometimes guys get hot and it's complete variance. So I'm not going to like die on a hill on this, but I think a guy with the skills that Luis Arias has can kind of do whatever he wants. You know how like people would talk about like Tony Gwynn or Ichiro, like everybody would say, like if those guys wanted to hit 30 home runs, they could because they're so skilled. They have such an unbelievable hit tool that they have that ability. And if you look at a Luis Arias, when he hits them, like they're not wall scrapers. Like he could hit them out. And I wonder if maybe there was either a change in approach at the end of the season where he tried to pull the ball more and hit more home runs, or we've seen this before. Sometimes these players with elite hit tools just grow into power. Think about like Jose Ramirez or Jose Altuve, guys that early in their career, they were just seen as batting average only guys. Now we look at those guys as 25 to 30 home run hitters. So nobody would have expected that type of progression from them. So I think when you already have that foundation of the contact skills and the hit tool, that there's definitely a chance to grow into more power. And let's not forget, Luis Arias is only 27 years old and has been a full-time player for only a couple years now. So my point is, like, if that happens, I think even if it doesn't happen, I think he's still a good pick because of what he provides, the advantage that he gives you in batting average. But let's say he grows into 15 homers, God forbid, 20 homers. Think about what an elite fantasy player he's going to be if that happens. So I don't know, just maybe it's crazy, but any quick thoughts on what I said about Luis Arias?
No, I agree. He has probably the highest floor of any player around this range with the batting average, but I think you're right that his ceiling is higher than a lot of people are giving it credit for. Because just a little bit more power, even if he sacrifices a little bit of the batting average for it. And you might be right. Maybe the approach changed down the stretch last year. You face a little bit weaker pitching in September than the rest of the year with the call-ups. But also, as the 400 average kind of lost its chance of reality, he maybe was focused a little less on that, let it rip a little bit more, and that's where the 5 home runs came from. So I'll give him some credit for that too. But yeah, if he approached 15 or 20 this year, he'd be an out-of-the-park pick at this rate.
Yeah, he's been slowly creeping up there with home runs. And I did just check, and he increased his fly ball rate by 10% from the first half to the second half. So he really just kind of tried to, I don't know if he tried to elevate more, but he was elevated more, and obviously started to reap the rewards of that a little bit. So it'd be really interesting to see what he did with a full season of that approach.
Yeah, he kind of fits that more from a general sense. Like when I'm making a pick in fantasy, I always want to ask myself, like, is there a path to upside here? Like I want a player that I know the floor makes them worth their pick, but do I also see, is there something I can grab onto that makes me think they could give me a profit on this pick? And I think Arias, because of the potential for power that I think is underestimated, he's like an ideal pick for me. Someone I'll probably have on a lot of teams this year.
I'm not as down on the Marlins offense this year as I have been in the past. I think the Jake Berger addition last year is big. They needed that power bat in the middle of the lineup. I know they haven't brought back Soler, but I think that they still have the option to bring in an outfielder. I know that there's always talk about Florida trading pitchers for hitters. Maybe that'll happen this year. But they're not as light hitting of a nothing offense as they were coming into the season the last couple of years.
Yeah, if Jazz can stay healthy, that would be great for everyone.
Yep, absolutely. All right, so we have about 10 minutes left. Do we have time for one more each, one more target, and we'll run through it much quicker?
Yeah, that works for me.
All right, so Nate, another player, AL only, going from in that 75 to 100 range.
So I'm going to go back to the Twins pitching staff and go with Bailey Ober. There are also a bunch of great young pitchers in this tier that I all really like. I think they can all take a massive step forward. But Bailey Ober's fastball changeup combo is absolutely insane. He's 6'9". He gets, I think, 99th percentile extension because he's so tall. But he's also getting really, really far down the mound, so he can get great vertical approach angle and make it really hard for hitters to time up that fastball and changeup. I was looking at some video of him, I think, last week, and he can go above the zone with a fastball and below the zone with a changeup in like almost a perfect tunnel, which not many guys can do because they don't have the length that he has. So I think that gives him a very solid floor to face right-handed batters, but he also has a slider and curveball that are around average to above average that give him like that extra flavor, a little more horizontal movement to be able to attack kind of everyone third time through the order as well. He's only projected for 150 innings, but he's kind of a solid SP3 for the Twins. And after that, it's like Chris Paddock and Louis Varland, and I think it kind of falls off depth-wise. So I think he may, being healthy, be able to go a little bit more. And I think he's going to be a great contributor for teams this late in the draft.
Yeah, and the other thing is that he is going to be an asset in WHIP, right? Like we know that he's a fly ball pitcher, so probably going to give up some home runs. ERA may be a little higher than we like, but the WHIP, given the lack of walks and I think we overlook that sometimes, even though, if you're in a roto league, it's a category. Like we look at other things rather than just WHIP. And it's like, well, if this guy is an elite, like there's not many guys, especially where he's going in the draft, that can give you like an elite WHIP. And I think he's definitely, I'm with you there. He's a target of mine. Sam, one last NL player here from 75 to 100.
Real quick, Rhys Hoskins is ranked at 95th right now. I don't think he's going to stay there, though, so I can't really make that my pick. I think he's going to fly up the boards a little bit now that he's just signed. But he is one of my preferred late first baseman picks right now. But sitting at 87 is Jackson Chourio, and I think he's getting overlooked a little bit because of all the international signings this year taking away the spotlight. But this kid is one of the top 2-3 prospects in the game on pretty much every list. He went 22 home runs, 40-some stolen bases across the minors last year. They inked him to a big, 8-year, $80 million deal over the offseason, so he's probably going to break camp with the Brewers this year. I think there's a good chance he hits in the top half of that lineup and can produce 20 home runs, 30, 40 stolen bases for people this year. And this is pretty late in the draft to be able to get somebody who I think has that much playing time and that much upside talent.
Yeah. So he's what, 19, right?
Yeah, he's 19.
He'll be 20. So yeah. There's risk there in terms of I think you're right. I think he does break camp with the team. But the skills, I definitely agree with what you said about I think he's just kind of going overlooked right now because, he signed that contract early in the offseason. And it's like we forgot about him almost. Like you had the Yamamoto signing, and I feel like you said, there's been these international free agents that we've lost sight of a guy who is the top 3 prospect in the game. So I agree. I think the playing time will be there, and they have no reason to send him down. He's already getting paid. So
no, yeah. At this point, you could see a pretty young outfield with him, Frelick, and Garrett Mitchell coming back too.
Yeah. Some other.
Yeah, I think his prospect career has been interesting because everyone's like, oh, he's so young, he can't keep getting away with this. And then he did. And
he just keeps doing it. Yeah, he started off a little bit slow last year and came on really strong over the middle and the end of the season.
Yeah, I think definitely superstar potential. I think that's a great pick.
Yeah. All right, guys. Well, we are coming to the end of our time here. Again, anybody who is watching and hasn't already donated, would love for you to. We've already met our goal, but we are not stopping there. You can go to pitcherlist.com/PitchCon and continue this to donate to a great cause in fighting ALS. So, encourage you to do that. Before we get out of here, wanted to ask you guys just more generally. And you could, I put it on the show sheet a certain way, but I'll kind of expand it. Who's one player who like you have to have this year? Like you can't walk away from a draft without this player, else you're just going to be miserable all season. So I'm going to start with you, Nate. Who is that?
That's going to be, this is both for mono league and mixed league, but Jarren Duran with the Red Sox. I think he's way too low in ADP. The batted ball skills have been very, very exciting. He lights up the StatCast or the Savant page. I think he's currently slotted to be the opening day center fielder for the Red Sox. He's projected to go, I think, like 15-25. I think he can easily surpass that. So I think definitely a really nice late 4 to 5 category play, which I'm all about. And I think there's minimal risk from a draft perspective on getting him.
I feel like, yeah, people just are sleeping on him this season for whatever reason. I don't know if it's they have concern that he'll get platooned or I really think it was just the injury at the end of the season last year. That's kind of, it's like a little bit of a smokescreen for how good he was last year. And I think it's keeping his price too cheap. I mean, it's really hard to find a guy. I think he could potentially, like, you're looking at a 30 to 40 stolen base guy, given how aggressive he was on the base paths, with the potential to give you 15 home runs. There's definitely some power there. So yeah, I agree. He's totally undervalued, and I wouldn't be surprised if next season we're looking at him as a top 50 pick, because we're looking at guys like CJ Abrams, right, in the top of drafts. Well, not saying that Jarren Duran is CJ Abrams, but are they that different that there should be such a huge gap in ADP? I don't think so, but obviously that's why they play games. We will see. All right, Sam, a player that you need in your life.
I've already spoken about Churio and Yamamoto, who I do very much want to get in most of these drafts. So I'm going to end up here with a homer pick instead and say Ke'Bryan Hayes, who started off the season pretty slow last year, only hit 232 in April, 208 in May. Then it started coming alive, hit 337 in June, missed most of July with an injury, then came back hitting 320 in August and 280 in September to end the season. And he hit 13 home runs over those past few months. So I'm hoping that sticks. He's always hit the ball well harder than average. And if he gets that launch angle fixed to stay, there's a lot of power in that bat. And you could see somebody hit 25, 30 home runs perhaps at a premium position that's getting shallower by the day with guys like Bobby Witt no longer eligible there.
Mm-hmm. Love it. Love Ke'Bryan Hayes. And maybe, a little bit of a homer pick with the Pirates. But no, I think I'm just playing. I think that is a really good pick there. I was pretty much like simpatico with all of your picks. So it wasn't just BSing you. I think it's some really good players that were mentioned here today. Quickly, who wins the you guys are both NL Central guys. Who wins the NL Central this year?
I'm going to be biased and say the Cardinals do in the most ugly fashion with like 85 wins. I don't see any team really making the jump that everyone thinks they might this year.
Okay, you got the Cardinals.
I think the Cubs probably have the strongest pitching staff in the division, so I'm going to stick with them. I like what they've done over the past few years. I think Shota hopefully adds something to the team. He's a fun signing. They just signed Hector Neris, bolstered the bullpen a little bit. We got that news this morning. It's the worst division in baseball. I don't think there's much question about that. So it probably is wide open. I even could see the Pirates have a shot, especially if Paul Skeens is on the roster earlier than later. But yeah, I agree. I think 85 wins could probably win it.
Yeah, I think actually the NL Central may have the AL Central beat. I think there's enough exciting talent on the Reds, the Cubs. I think the Pirates could be interesting.
The Twins are legitimately good, though, I think.
Yeah, but it's also the Twins.
Yeah, that's true.
They always find their way to. They're very injury prone, so who knows?
Yeah, the Central is definitely holding down, whether it's AL or NL. I would say it's those are some pretty rough divisions, but we will leave it there for today. This has been awesome hanging with you guys. I think again some really good information that was shared here. Just take a minute to remind everybody where they can find you. Well, Sam, I know you're not on social media, but where they could find your work and follow you.
Yeah, so you can find me on Twitter at _ Nate Schwartz, where I talk about the Cardinals and pitchers, but never Cardinals pitchers because they're all old and boring. And then at Pitcher List, where I'll be writing all season.
And yeah, and for me, you gotta click on Pitcher List and read my Deep League articles during the summer.
Awesome. And thank you so much. And want to thank Nick Pollock for giving us this opportunity. Again, you can find me on social media at Torres Takes, posting fantasy baseball nonsense over there. And you can listen to me on my podcast with Mike Carter called The Fantasy Baseball Beat at Triple Play Fantasy.